any two languages and examine their properties. Okay. So what are broadly the areas you can take of language that you can take to examine their relationships with each other? One area, of course, is phonology. How the sounds of the language are organized. Okay, plenty of things. So I mentioned one example just now, that some languages have nasalized vowels, some languages do not have them. Okay, there are languages which do not make a distinction between voiced consonants and voiceless consonants. Okay, they have allophonic distributions. In Tamil, for example, originally, the consonant which comes in the middle would be pronounced as a voiced sound. Kadag, da. Okay. Whereas the consonant coming in the beginning would always be voices. Ka, ta, pa. Okay. So in Tamil, they did not make a distinction between voiced and voiceless sounds. Malayalam, of course, although it is closely related genetically to Tamil, you make a difference. In English, definitely. Okay. Box is different from pox. Two very different things. All right. So, how phonologically two languages are there? Various elements of phonology, such as the type of consonants that you have in one language and the type of consonants you have in another. Okay. How sounds are pronounced together. For example, what we call stress in English. English is a stress-timed language, which means not all sounds in a word are pronounced the same way. We have slightly different ways of pronouncing different syllables in a word. For example, when you say electricity, you have a particular stress on electricity. Okay. But when you say electrification, you have a stress on cation. So this is called stress. Malayalam doesn't have stress. Okay. Malayalamത്തിൽ ഇതേ വാക്കുകൾ പറഞ്ഞു നോക്കാം നമുക്ക്. Electricity. Okay. Electrification. Vaidyutivalkaranam. Vaidyutikaranam. All syllables are pronounced with the same amount of force. So here, a syllable, the time taken to utter one syllable and the other is more or less the same. I say more or less because when you say a word in any language, some syllables would be more prominent, others will be less. But there is no systematic way in which one syllable is more prominent than the other. In English, there's a system. You even have 3 levels of stress: primary stress, secondary stress, and tertiary stress. Okay. So phonologically, again, we look at the way in which sounds form clusters, consonant clusters. In English, you can have a word like spring, s, p, r. 3 consonants can occur together. Other languages will not allow it. Although Malayalam speakers now use English very commonly, they can pronounce English words easily. But Malayalam as such does not allow such clusters. Even Tamil is still more reluctant to allow clusters. So look at how Tamil is written. They'll use the English word plus. They can easily say plus, but how do they write it? They write it as plus, p, l, s. Those who know Tamil know this. Okay. For pravu, Malayalis would say pravu easily. Tamil people would say pravu, but they'll write it as puravu. Okay. And some people will pronounce it as pravu. Still, they do that. Okay. You know that joke about the wife who told her husband to buy her a bra, B-R-A. And the husband brought a dog, Pura. He heard it as Pura, not Bira. You get this. So this joke is still current because of the Tamil habit of not allowing consonant clusters. Okay, so a lot of other things. What sounds can occur together? Whether sounds are elided. What sound changes to what when they come together? Goodbye. When you pronounce it together in English, native speakers would say goodbye. Okay. So phonology, you'll know more about it. You can examine various phonological features of a language, individual sounds, stress, intonation again. Okay. And you also have heard of languages which are called tonal languages. What are tonal languages? Tonal languages are languages which have a system by which the meaning of a word changes if a particular syllable is pronounced with a different intonation. Okay, for example, take Chinese, for example. In Chinese, as in many other languages, ma, pronounced with a falling tone, would mean mother. But if it is pronounced with a rising tone, ma, it would mean a horse. So tones are semantically significant. Okay. So the shape of a word depends not only on its individual syllables or its stress. Some languages have stress. Okay. For example, in English, if you say permit, it's a noun. When you say permit, it's a verb. Okay. I won't permit this. That's it. It means you're talking about you're permitting something. Permit is a verb. Whereas I didn't get a permit last week. No. Okay. So the class of the word changes depending upon how you stress it. If you stress the word on the first syllable, it's a noun. If you stress it on the second, it's a verb. Okay. So this is what happens in phonology when you look at how the language is organized phonologically. You find out how one language has a particular system, another language might have the same system, or it might have a different system. Okay, so phonology is one area which you can use to find the relationship between languages. Okay, so you can talk about languages which follow, let us say, stress time, like English or German. You can talk about languages which follow syllable time, which doesn't have a system of stress like English, Malayalam, Hindi, Gujarati, Bengali, French, so many languages in the world. So look at this. So you can examine phonology to find out how languages can be classified according to their phonological system. Okay. Now, coming to the next system, subsystem within languages, it's called morphological system. Morphology. You know what is morphology? Morphology is the system of word formation and word structure. Okay. So, how are words organized in a language? How can you classify languages according to how words are organized? Basically, they have two systems of classification. One is called synthetic, and the other is called analytic. Okay, what is the difference? Synthetic languages are languages which allow words to be combined easily. Okay. Analytical languages are languages which do not allow words to be combined easily. Some of the analytical languages do not allow any combination at all. Chinese, for example. I don't know Chinese, but in Chinese, every word is separate. In English, for example, you can say child plus S. The child's record. the child's bag, the child's problem, etc. Apostrophe S. Okay. I am getting a new car. Get plus ing. You have added ing. Get ing. Getting. Okay. So this is called synthesis, joining together. Chinese doesn't allow that at all. Okay. And this synthesis and analysis occur in varying degrees. There are few languages like there are just a few languages like Chinese which don't allow any combination. Okay, but for synthesis also there are some restrictions. You cannot, for example, combine 100 words into one. Okay, you can't do that. So there are restrictions. You can combine certain words. You cannot combine certain other words. Okay. You can, for example, form large compounds, like in German, for example. Look at if you are thinking of a word like this. Okay, they are written separately. The corporation electrical executive chief engineer. How many words? Corporation electric executive chief engineer. 5 words. Okay. Most probably we'll write these words separately in English. In German, you write them together. So if you look at German text, you'll find that a large number of words can be combined. Okay, this is one thing. Again, how do you get the connection between words? As we saw, the child's bag. Child and bag are connected by inflecting child. Apostrophe S. Okay. Chinese doesn't allow that. So this is called inflection. Inflection is allowed in some languages. Inflection comes at the end of the word. Okay. Then you have other kinds of affixation. You can add an affix at the beginning. You can suppose you have a word like countable. You can add un at the beginning. It becomes uncountable. Okay. So affix, prefix, suffix. You can suffix something to a word. Okay. You can have an inflection. You can add for God, godless. Okay. Power, powerful. You add the suffix at the end. You have prefix. But English doesn't allow infix. You cannot insert a particle in between a word. Arabic allows that. Okay. So khatib, khatib, you insert a vowel in between, the word changes. Okay. So infixes are there in some languages. So you can classify languages according to whether they allow infixes, whether they allow suffixes, whether they have inflections. Okay. Shape of the word. Number of words that can be combined. What kind of words can be combined, etc. So morphologically also you can classify words. How words are arranged in order in a text. So I'm just giving you a gist. You can multiply examples. You can have plenty of examples for this. How words are organized. Okay. How words are combined. What kind of words can be combined, etc. How many nouns can you combine together? Can you combine an adjective and a noun? Can you combine an adverb and a verb? Or an adjective and a verb? All these are possible. Some languages allow some kind of combinations. Others allow other kinds of combinations. So, morphology, what did I say in the beginning? Phonology, yes. How sounds are organized? What kind of sounds are possible in a language? 3. What is number 3? Number 3 represents what we call syntactical relationships. Okay, which broadly also involves, one can say, not just how words are arranged in a sentence. various grammatical property in its grammar. Grammar is how a language works. You can think of a language being working in various ways. What are the rules of the language? Rules of the language operating as a whole. Not rules of combination, not rules of its sounds, but how a language can be organized into systematic sentences. Yeah, you can call it syntagmatic. Okay. So look at a number of rules in a language. Okay. One I have already mentioned, that some languages have active passive difference. You have active voice and passive voice. Some languages do not have it. Okay. So this is one grammatical rule. Okay. Or look at the idea of gender. That also I mentioned. Okay. Some languages have gender, grammatical gender. Okay. Which means the gender is grammatically significant. Okay, for example, which means that you don't use gender in whether the subject is male, female, or no. A gender is assigned to a type of word. Okay. So the grammatical gender need not have anything to do with natural gender. For example, in Hindi, mooch, mustache, okay, which is very much a male characteristic, is feminine. Okay, so this is how grammatical gender operates. It needn't have anything to do with uh, natural gender. Okay. So some languages have, and again, in how gender operates, some languages have their verbs inflected for gender. Okay. For example, you can say karta ho, karti ho, karte hai, karte ho, etc. in Hindi. Okay. Depending upon the gender, and not only the gender but also the person. For first person you have a form, for second person you have a form, for a third person you have another form. All right. So gender, number, a verb is inflected for gender and number. In Tamil, the verb is inflected for gender. Yes. Now one there. Nam vande, avan vandaan, aval vandal, our vandar, etc. But the adjectives are not inflected. In Hindi, adjectives are also bhura, bhuri, acha, achi, depending upon what noun follows these adjectives. In Tamil, there is no inflection on adjectives. Nalla, ketta, etc. Okay, but when you add a particle to indicate a person, pronouns, for example, okay, nallavan, nallaval, etc. That is a different thing. But when you can say nalla, periya, okay, in Hindi you have to say bada or badi, bada acha, okay, badi baat. In Tamil, adjectives are not inflected. Okay, so gender, where gender operates. Okay, number, for example. Okay, we know that we have singular and plural in Malayalam. Okay, but in some languages you have singular, dual. Dual means two numbers. Sanskrit, for example. Ramaha, Ramo, Rama. Those who have studied Siddharupam knows. Siddharupam is just a conjugation of these three forms plus cases. Ramaha, Ramo, Ramaha, Ramasya, Ramaya, etc. etc. So there is a singular dual. Ramaha, Rama, Ramo, Rama. Rama means two Ramas. Rama more than two Ramas. So singular, dual, plural. Some languages have only singular and plural. You don't have a dual. All right. So such properties. Then the use of the use of cases. How many cases are available? Okay, cases are words or particles of words which indicate the relationship between the subject and another word. ഞാൻ, okay, എന്നെ, എന്നോട്, എനിക്ക്, എന്നാൽ, etc. etc. Okay, so some languages have more case variations, case connections. Other language, Malayalam has around 7. English has just 4. Okay. Case, the meanings are available. Okay. In English also you can have a similar meaning. For eniki, for example, you can say to me. Okay. Okay. For me. Okay. To me. Ennod, he said to me. Okay. Eniki, ennod, enne. Simply me would mean enne. Okay. So how cases are organized is also different. Cases, gender, active voice, passive voice, movement within a sentence. Okay. The car sped quickly down the hill. You can say. You can move some of the words in this sentence. You can move quickly to a number of places. You can move it to the beginning. Quickly, the car sped down the hill. You can also say, the car quickly sped down the hill. Or again, the car sped quickly down the hill. The car sped down the hill quickly. 4 different places. In Malayalam, you can't move a word like this. Take this, the equivalent of quickly. പെട്ടെന്ന് കാറ് മല മുകളിൽ നിന്ന് താഴോട്ട് കുതിച്ചു. പെട്ടെന്ന് കാറ് മലമുകളിൽ നിന്ന് കുതിച്ചു പെട്ടെന്ന്. Slightly odd. All right. So in movement also, different languages allow different freedom. Okay. Various other parts, grammatical categories you can think of. You can, when you have free time, you can think of the differences. You can a number of other things, such as word order I've already mentioned. SOV, SVO, okay, VSO in some language where the verb comes first. Okay, so a number of other grammatic properties. Okay, gender, number, 2 things I've already mentioned. Transformations. What Chomsky said. How you can change one sentence into another. Active passive transformation. Any other kind of transformation. Statement into question. Okay. ഞാൻ പോയി, ഞാൻ പോയോ, etc. I went, did I go? Where the transformation involves splitting the word പോയി. Okay. So adding another auxiliary verb, did, in English. So I went, did I go? So these are different properties of languages. So remember that these are the 3 broad areas in which you find languages identifying themselves. Okay. You can look up any good book on language typology, and you will find that you cannot have a set of languages as belonging to type A, type B, type C, etc. Point blank, generally. But you can have a set of languages classified according to whether they allow gender, grammatical gender. So there you can have type A, type B, type C. For example, languages which do not have any grammatical gender at all. A. B. Languages which have grammatical gender in some areas. Okay. C. Grammatic which have grammatical gender in almost all areas, which we already saw. Tamil does not have gender in its adjectives, but it has gender in its verbs. So these are, in other words, how you can look at typology in a nutshell. Okay. So please interact with me. You can read more about typology, but what I have just outlined will serve your cause very well. Okay, you can now say how you can classifying language. But remember that you cannot have an overall classification of a language into one type. You have to use a particular criterion for example. As I said, see if the language allows nasalized vowels. Okay, yes or no. So languages which which have nasalized vowels, languages which do not have nasalized vowels. Okay, languages which has gender, languages which does not have gender, grammatical gender. Okay, if sometimes languages which have grammatical gender partially, languages which have almost an overwhelming use of grammatical gender, number of cases in a language. Okay. Quite a few other characteristics you can think of. Okay, use of indirect object as in Malayalam. English. Malayalam doesn't have a system of indirect objects. English has a system of indirect objects. So more and more such things. You can look up various grammatical categories to find how languages react, how languages use or do not use these grammatical categories or grammatical rules. Okay. So remember what when Chomsky talked about universal grammar, he was talking about certain properties which are common to all languages. Yes, because obviously, because all languages have descended from the same language. Basically, we know that almost for sure. So, which would mean that definitely they have a large underlying core, which is the same. Okay. Just as human beings like us, not just languages, which is why we are called Homo sapiens. All people, human beings living in any part of the language world, belong to the same category. We are different. Okay, we have accumulated differences over a period of time, but this doesn't mean that there is a large underlying core by which we are. That's why we are given the same medicines. A vaccine is being developed for COVID, not one. Many scientists are working on different kinds of vaccines for COVID. So an American will take the same vaccine as an Indian. That's because we have the same underlying core structure and characteristics as a species. Similarly, all human languages have this underlying core set of characteristics which Chomsky called universal grammar. But they also have differences, like how we differ from Americans or Chinese or Japanese. There are certain characteristics, some of which are like in language genetic. We are prone to some diseases. We are not prone to other diseases. We are better off. We have immunity against some diseases, but we are not immune to certain other diseases. So this is so. So remember that when we are talking about language typology, we are indirectly also remembering human typology. Okay, thank you. So please interact with me, send your queries, suggestions to the group, and I'll try to respond to them. Thank you. It's 7:49 by my watch. I should go for a walk. High time I went for a walk. Bye.